What's up guys, my name is Matthew and today I'm going to be doing my February wrap up. Alright, so February wasn't great. I read some good books, but I didn't read a lot of books because February is a shorter month. Shorter month means that I have to work harder at work because we have less days to make hours, so work was pretty stressful. On top of that, I'm from New Orleans, so we had Mardi Gras, so there was a lot of partying. So I did not get to read as many books as I would like, but that being said, I did find one of my all-time new favorite books. So we have a 5-star book in here. I had 1 5-star book, 4 4-star books, and 2 3-star books. So, I mean, the rating of the books I read were pretty high. So it was a good mix of books, but just not a lot of books. I want to start off with talking about the 800-page fantasy book that I read. Like, who am I? I don't read fantasy books. But I don't know who it was, but I saw somebody on BookTube talking about this book, and I felt a calling. I go, you need to read this book. It's 800 pages, it's a fantasy book. But there was something about the way the person explained it to me, I was like, I think I would like that. And that is A House of Earth and Blood by Crescent City. This is a very mainstream book. Sarah J. Maas is like really popular, so this is not a secret book. Everybody knows about this book. I'm very late to the party with this one. I think what really drew me to this book was the fact that it's a fantasy book, but it's also an urban fantasy book. I had never read an urban fantasy book. So an urban fantasy book just means that there's fantastical elements, but it's set in modern day with technology and everything's... You know, I've read fantasy books like Game of Thrones and the Winter... What is it called? Mistborn. The Mistborn, the first book. And it's very like Dungeons, Dragons, medieval. And I enjoyed them, but there was just a part of me that was removed from the book. And there was something about reading about fantastical elements in present day, in modern times, that really gripped me, and I loved this book. I was thrown into this world. I destroyed this. It was 800 pages. She is thick. A lot goes on in this book. I'm not gonna sit here and try to break down the world because it's a lot. They have humans, angels, merpeople, vampires, werewolves, fae. Literally any type of mythical creature is in this book. On top of that, you know, we're dealing with people who are partying and clubbing and living normal lives, but at the same time dealing with their best friends being murdered by demons. So it's a little bit of a mix of the fantasy and the modern that I really loved. This book is about a girl named Bryce who is half fae, which I'm not really sure what fae means. I think it's like, when I picture fae, I picture like, almost kind of like fairy or like, I don't know. I didn't read any of her other books. I don't really know what a fae is, but I picture it kind of like fairy-ish, kind of. Let me know if I'm wrong with that. She is, you know, a party girl. She goes out, she has a job that she doesn't really like, and she has really good friends. One night, all of her friends are killed by demons, and she is destroyed. Her life is turned upside down. This book is a fantasy book, but it's also kind of a thriller, meaning there's like a murder mystery element mixed into the 800 pages that I really enjoyed and really kind of kept me involved and invested in the book because you're trying to figure out what happened to her friends. And I don't know if it's because I read a lot of thriller books, but I did find the whodunit of this book pretty obvious. I kind of knew from the beginning who or what is the, you know, who were the bad people in this book. But I really enjoyed it. On top of Bryce meets this like fallen angel. I'm not gonna get into like what a fallen angel is because it's just, there's a lot going on. And so there's a romance element to this book and it's angsty, but honestly, it's not like a smutty book. And apparently from what I've heard on BookTube that Sarah J. Maas's books are normally really smutty. Nothing sexual happened in this book until about page 600. So it's really not a romance book, but there's underlying romance tones in the book. But really what this book is about is just like, what happened to her friends, this kind of ongoing mystery, learning about the world. This world is like, and I thought I wasn't gonna be able to follow it or understand it, but Sarah J. Maas, the author, does such a good job at mixing the story, but at the same time giving you information where it's not like info dumping, but you're learning about the world, but you're interested. So I really enjoyed it. If you're not a fantasy reader, I still think you would love it because I'm not a fantasy reader and I am absolutely obsessed with this book. Let me tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of when I was 13 years old and I first encountered Twilight. Shut the fuck up. I know you're gonna say, oh my God, this book is nothing like Twilight. It's not like Twilight. But it gave me those same feelings. It's very nostalgic for me where you read a book and you're just so engrossed in the book. Is that how you pronounce that word? I always say it, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. You're so invested in the book, and that's what I felt like when I was 13 reading Twilight, and it's the same feeling I felt reading this book. I will say, at page 700, the whodunit aspect of the book is solved, and I felt like the book should have probably ended there, but then there was about 100 extra pages of what I call a Marvel fight scene. I mean, if you've watched a Marvel movie, there's always fight scenes that are about 10 minutes long, and it's just CGI graphics and just fighting, and at the end, someone might die. That's usually when I go to the bathroom during a Marvel movie, because I just don't care about the fight scenes, and that's how I felt with the last 100 pages of this book, where it was just like, a lot going on, and I just didn't think it was necessary, and I was just like, why did you add these 100 pages? It was just a lot. But I still ended up giving it 5 stars. This explanation, or me talking about this book, is getting a little long, but I do recommend it. I told myself I wasn't gonna jump into the second book because I have other books I wanted to read, but turns out I'm already 100 pages into the sequel. So, you know, that should tell you that I'm very invested, very into the world, very into the characters. It's been such a nice distraction from the real world. It's been nice, and just a world where, you know, I can just escape, and it makes me want to return to. So I definitely recommend it, and definitely one of my new favorite books of all time. So earlier in the month, I did a more gay reading vlog where I read 2 gay thrillers, and I gave both of those books 4 stars. I'm not gonna go into much detail about these books because I vlogged them live, and you can go watch that video if you want more information. But the first book I read was The Damage by Wahrer, or whatever, and I loved it, 4 stars. It's about a guy named Nick who is sexually assaulted one night, and his brother Tony trying to protect him, and Tony has a wife named Julia, and Julia's a lawyer. And the whole book is just really, you know, what happened that night that Nick was sexually assaulted, how sexual assault affects the entire family, not just the victim, dealing with themes of people not believing the victim or thinking that this sexual assault, the victim brought it on himself. And I think the underlying theme of this book is, you know, how far will you go to protect your family? And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so well done. Is it a gay thriller? I kind of concluded no. It's more of a family drama, but there were thrilling aspects of this book, but I loved it. People aren't talking enough about this book because I do think that a lot of people would like this book. I think it's very well done. It's a debut novel, and it was fantastic. I loved it. I tabbed it, and we know I like to read my tabs. Okay. It's easy to be good when things are good. And, you know, I feel like that kind of sums up the book. It's easy to be good when things are good, but when things are bad, it's not easy to be good. God, I sound like a school teacher or something. Okay, but yes, 4 stars, and I loved it. Definitely check this out. It was a book of the month back in who knows when. Second book I read in my More Gay Thriller vlog was Tallowwood by N.R. Wahrer. This is a book set in Australia, and we have a detective named August Shaw, and August Shaw is gay, and he has been tasked with figuring out what happened. Well, he hasn't been tasked with this. He's personally taken it upon himself to figure out why there's a lot of gay men in Sydney and in outskirts of Sydney who are being murdered, but it looks like these men committed suicide. The reason that August Shaw doesn't buy that it's a suicide is because all the men wake up with like a poem in their pocket and some sort of metal object. I don't know if it's a cross. So it's clearly sketch. He doesn't buy that it's a suicide. More suicides start happening in Tallowwood. It's like a more rural city outside of Sydney, or I think it's like far away from Sydney. He meets a guy named Constable Jacob Porter, and they're trying to figure out why these suicides are happening. There's 10% of this book is about a romance. I could have done without the romance, but it was cute. I really enjoyed this. I give it 4 stars. I liked, you know, how queer it was. Every character in this book is part of law enforcement, so if that's not your thing, if you don't like detective books, you're not gonna like this book because it's very detective-y, police force. Like, I honestly think everyone works for the police in this book. The whodunit wasn't shocking, and it was actually very cringe, and the whodunit aspect made me uncomfortable and did give me like the heebie-jeebies, so that was well done. But if you're looking for more, you know, a thriller that involves a lot of gay characters, I definitely recommend Tallowwood. The next book I gave 4 stars to was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I finally got around to it. I do think it lives up to the hype, especially since it's a young adult book, and if you watch my channel, you know I am not a big fan of young adult books, especially young adult thrillers, because they bore me. I actually listened to this on audiobook, and I recommend it on audiobook because a lot of this book is done in interview style, where our main character is interviewing witnesses and they have multiple narrators, so it's very well done and it feels real. It reminded me of that podcast Serial by This American Life. You know what Serial is, about Adnan Syed and did he kill that girl? Forgot her name. But that's what it felt like. It felt real because you were getting, our protagonist was interviewing people, trying to figure out what happened. And I loved the audiobook because it was like a full cast and just so well done. What is this book about? If you haven't read it, but I'm sure most of you have. It's about a girl named Pip, who years ago, there was a very popular girl named Andy, and her boyfriend Sal got accused of killing Andy. Kind of like Serial, hello. Pip decides for her school project, she's gonna investigate this because she doesn't buy that Sal actually killed Andy. And this book is just her student project and her notes and like what she figures out about the murder mystery, what really happened to Andy. The whodunit was fantastic. It felt, listening to it, I didn't read it, I listened to it and it felt like I was listening to a podcast. It was very well done. It felt real at times. I had to remind myself this isn't actually a girl really trying to figure out what happened. It's just fiction, but very well done for being a young adult. I think it's worth the hype. Will I pick up the sequel anytime soon? Probably not, because I don't know, I'm not called to pick up the sequel right now, but I think I will eventually. I definitely recommend it, and I definitely recommend it on audiobook. The final 4-star book I gave this month is The Silent Woods by Kimi Cunningham Grant. This was Gabby Reed's February Book of the Month pick, and I loved it. It's marketed as a thriller, and it's more of a contemporary. So, like I told you, if you've watched some of my videos, in the publishing world, I've learned that a lot of books are marketed as thrillers, even though they're not thrillers, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, thrillers sell better. So I think a lot of publishers are like, how can we pitch this as a thriller? Because we know it'll sell more copies. That being said, I loved it. And even though it wasn't thrilling, it was a contemporary, I just fell in love with the characters. I thought it was a beautiful story. It had thrilling parts, but this is not a thriller by any means. And yeah, so if you go into this thinking it's a thriller, I think you will be let down. And from the reviews and the live show I saw with Gabby Reed and the comments, people who did not like this book just felt like they were tricked because they thought they were going into a thriller, and it's just more of a story about a dad and his daughter, and it was very pretty, very cute book. So this book is about a guy named Cooper and his daughter Finch, who live in a remote cabin out in the woods. They don't see civilization. Every year, a guy named Jack comes and brings them supplies. So the underlying mystery of the book is, why are they out in the wilderness? What did Cooper do to make him want to hide out in the woods and not be around civilization? You're learning about, the daughter and the dad dynamics. It's so cute, so heart-wrenching at times, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. If you do decide to pick this up, go into it knowing, okay, I'm not reading a thriller, I'm reading a contemporary with some heavy themes. The epilogue I loved. It was just, it was in the future, and it was such a good book. I liked it because guess what? It was only 275 pages. That is perfect. I never felt like there was some sluggish time because it was short. Sometimes short is better. A lot of authors should take notes on that. Don't add an extra 100 pages to your book because you feel like it's too short. Sometimes more concise is better, and it has more effect. So I think this book is very well done, and I definitely think that you should pick it up if you're interested. Just don't think it's a thriller, because it's not a thriller. Okay, on to my 3-star books. So I added my Amazon wish list to the description of my videos just because, why not? And the second I did that, I got a book in the mail, The Place Between by Kit Oliver from Kelly. And honestly, it made my day. I texted all my friends like, y'all, someone sent me a book and I'm so excited. Kelly, I don't think you're on BookTube, but if you are, leave a comment so I can follow you. But you honestly made my day. That was so sweet. I did not think people were actually gonna send me books, and thank you for sending me. I opened the package because Amazon doesn't tell you if you're getting a book, and I opened the package and I was like, wait, I definitely was looking at this book, but did I buy this on my Tylenol PM stupors? I don't remember purchasing this book. And then the little note came and I was like, oh my God, someone bought this for me. I mean, Kelly, are you actually my mom? And my mom's just pretending like someone sent me a book, because I'm convinced all of my subscribers are just my mom with different Gmail accounts just to make me feel like I'm not a loser. But Kelly, if you are real, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And this book is about a guy named Ned who, this is my favorite part of the book. Ned is bisexual, and he had a wife and he has a daughter. Him and his wife got a divorce, and this book is about him and a male-male relationship. I loved how this book kind of took on a bisexual man and didn't stigmatize it or make it, it was so normal. No one was like, oh, is he really bisexual? Because I feel like bisexual men in today's society are always kind of labeled, oh, you're not actually bisexual, you're actually gay. And I think that's a struggle that bisexual people have, especially bisexual men. And I think this book did a great job of just, oh, he was married to a woman, cool, he has a daughter, now he's dating a guy, cool. Nothing, that's normal. And I think this book did a fantastic job at that. I love that representation. But the book is about a guy named Ned who was recently divorced. He works in academia, and he had this teacher, Dr. Charles Henry Abbott, PhD, who's your kind of stereotypical, aloof, kind of cold man. And he was mean to Ned when he was his teacher. Now Ned is in academia trying to write his thesis, and Charles Henry Abbott is he needs his help on the statistical aspects of his thesis. It's a very slow burn. I loved it. It was super cute. I'm having struggles with romance books these days, but I will say this is very good. Gave it 3 stars, but it wasn't the book's fault. I think it's just me and my own issues that I'm having trouble reading romance books. I thought it was very cute. I did have problems with, this book is set in academia, and like the guy in charge, like the main, I don't know what he is, like not the principal, the dean, I guess. Like he didn't want the teachers working so much, so he blocked their VPN and make sure they can't work, locked all the doors to the school so they can't work after hours. That's bullshit. That does not happen in real life. Like, I'm sorry. Like, everyone is encouraged to work. I don't work in academia, but I know that's like that. Was not a real depiction of how academia would ever be, and I kind of rolled my eyes at parts of that. But I went to this book just being like, okay, this would never happen. People are not encouraged not to work, or I've never heard of that. Let me know if your work encouraged you not to work. But this is very cute, and then thank you again, Kelly. You honestly made my day for sending me this, and I did not expect anyone to send me a book. If you do send me a book, I will make sure to read it because I think that is just the sweetest little thing. Okay, and the last book that I want to talk about, I gave 3 stars to, and probably my most disappointing book of the month is Shiver by Allie Reynolds. I think I was most disappointed by this book because it has my favorite trope. If you've watched my videos, you know my favorite trope is a group of friends who, in the past, something tragic happened to the group of friends. The group of friends might not be as close anymore, but something happens in the present where the group of friends have to come back together for a reunion or funeral, marriage, any kind of reason to get them to come back together. And then when they get back together, things from the past start surfacing, and like, what really happened in the past? Is what we thought really happened? Is that murderer really the person who killed that person? That's my favorite trope in a book. There was a lot of words. There's probably like one word to describe that. Past, present, mixed together with a group of friends. So I was really excited about this book, and it was just meh for me. And I think it was meh for me because I didn't like the characters. I didn't care. It was also set in a ski resort with a lot of references to like not skiing, but like snowboarding and stuff like that. And I've never skied or snowboard, and I just don't care. I didn't care. It's set in Europe, in France, but it's about a girl named Mila. I honestly forgot most of this book already. And so let me get cut. So this girl disappears, and no one really knows what happened to her. Was she murdered? Did she die up in the mountains? Did she run away? So you don't really know what happens. Friends get asked to come back. So the friends come back to this like ski resort where they used to train to go to the Olympics, or not the Olympics, but just any like snowboarding competitions. I don't know anything about snowboarding, so I was kind of bored with that. But when they get there, they decide to play like a 2 truths and a lie game, or just like, they all had to like put a truth into a box. They had to guess whose truth is who. And all the truths were like, I killed this person. I slept with the girl. I killed the girl. I know who killed the girl. And they were all just like, wait, who put those in the box? And none of them admit to it. So then you're like, wait, what's going on? What really happened to that girl whose name I forgot? And meh, the girl who disappeared or got murdered was awful. She was an awful human being. And I just was like, well, you know, like, I act like that. I'm just kidding. I don't encourage murder. But yeah, I didn't like this book. I gave it 3 stars because it was my favorite trope, and the mystery element was okay. I just didn't care about the characters. So this was definitely a letdown. If you're looking for a book with very snowy atmosphere, I mean, this is very, but like, look how snowy that is. So it's very atmospheric, but I just didn't care, and it didn't do it for me. Definitely a letdown in my favorite tropes, but you know, they're not all gonna be winners. But those were the 6 books I read this month. I'm currently reading House of Sky and Breath, and I'm currently reading The Paris Apartment. Honestly, this one's boring right now, but I heard it gets better in the second half. And I just purchased A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the same author as Crescent City. So I'm gonna start this series after I finish, because Sarah J. Maas, I'm late to the party and I'm here for all the Sarah J. Maas books. But those are all the books I read in February. Pretty good month. Some really good books, some mediocre books, but it was a good month. Let me know if you've read any of those books. Let me know if you have any recommendations based on my interests, and I will see you guys in another video soon.